One second. So this is an overview of my presentation. These are the various points that I'm going to be speaking on. Starting with what is hydropower. Hydropower is the power derived from the energy of water that falls from a height or that falls at a high speed. And this energy is harnessed for useful purposes. So what we do in hydropower is we convert potential energy and kinetic energy of water into electrical energy. It is a renewable energy source because water cycle is constantly renewed by the sun. The water cycle is as follows. So here we have the sunlight that's falling on the ocean. The water evaporates and the water vapor rises into the atmosphere. The water vapor here condenses and forms water droplets. The water droplets then form clouds, and when these clouds become heavy enough, then the water returns back to the earth as rainfall. So why do we need hydropower? We know that non-renewable energy resources, that is fossil fuels like natural gas, coal, etc., take millions of years to form. So naturally, the production rate is very less as compared to the rate at which we're consuming energy. We're constantly looking for renewable energy resources like hydropower, wind power, solar power. Also, burning of fossil fuels emits greenhouse gases. So hydropower reduces has zero greenhouse gas emission. In comparison with thermal power plants, hydropower plants start very quickly. Thermal power plants need 5 to 6 hours to start because we have to achieve boiler temperature pressure. Whereas in hydropower, we just have to open the gates of the dam, allow the water to flow, which spins a turbine, which is connected to a generator, which generates electricity. Also, in comparison with wind and solar energy, which depend on weather conditions and time of the day respectively, hydropower depends only on water and which is always available. So these are the reasons why we want to improve this technology and use it further. So this is the energy production statistics. The first pie chart is the global energy production. So out of the total energy sources in the world, only 9% is renewable. And out of this 9% renewable energy, 35% is hydroelectric power. The largest producer of hydroelectricity in the world is China. Also, the largest hydroelectric power plant in the world is in China, the Three Gorges Dam, which has a power capacity of 22,500 megawatts. Here we have energy production in India. In India, out of the total energy sources, 13% is hydropower. So I'll talk about hydropower in India a little bit later. Let's start with the history of hydropower. So humans have been harnessing water energy for thousands of years. The first picture here is an irrigation system used in ancient Egypt. So this water lifting device was used to irrigate farming land. This was aimed to increase the area of farming land around the river Nile. The second invention was a great invention by Archimedes called the Archimedes screw. So the Archimedes screw is encased in a hollow cylinder. A part of the screw is immersed in water, the lower portion of the screw, and this water is transported upwards by rotating this device about this axis. So this is a very useful device which was used to lift grains, it was used to clear flooded mines, and is also used for irrigation. Now coming to water wheel, the first people to use wheels were Greeks. They used water wheels to grind wheat into flour, and the water wheels. Then by the 1080, the water wheels were used throughout Western Europe. So these are the different designs of water wheels that progressed in with time. So this is the undershot wheel, the first type, which in which water flows from under the wheel. So this was very inefficient because kinetic energy of water wasn't captured efficiently. With time, the designs improved and we got the overshot wheel and the breastshot wheel. So in both these wheels, we see that water is incident on the wheel from a height. And still, there were many more improvements made over the centuries to improve the efficiencies of water wheels. And finally, in 1832, the French engineer Ferniron invented the Ferniron turbine. So Ferniron turbine is a fully submerged vertical axis device. These blue things that you see here, these are the fixed vanes. These fixed vanes or guide vanes are stationary. So when water falls on the turbine, these vanes simply direct the water towards the running blades. These white things are the running blades or the rotating runners. So this design actually enables maximum kinetic energy of the water to be captured. So the Ferniron turbine pioneered the development of modern water turbines. The modern water turbines are basically of two designs, the impulse turbine and the reaction turbine. Impulse turbine uses the impulse force exerted by the water, and reaction turbine uses the reaction force exerted by the water. An example of impulse turbine is the Pelton wheel shown here. This Pelton wheel was invented by Alan Pelton in the 1870s. So this type of water turbine is suitable when water energy is available at high head and low Q. Head is basically the vertical distance between the top of a reservoir and the turbine, and Q is the volume of water that flows per second. So let's see how this works. So water, this nozzle that you see here, water is injected in this nozzle, and it is ejected at a very high speed. So we get a water jet, and this water jet is incident on these blades, which then rotate. So this, like this. So the blades, the shaft of the turbine also rotates. This shaft is then connected to a generator, which generates electricity. So we see that the kinetic energy of the incident water is converted to the rotational energy of the blade. So basically the power output of the turbine is equal to the kinetic energy incident per second, and it is given by this formula here, half rho q u square, where u is the velocity of the water jet. Okay, so the wheel has bucket shaped blades. The shape of the blades is for this reason that had the shape not been of bucket, then the momentum of the water would not have been captured entirely. So the water would have just been splashed in many directions had it not been of this shape. But this shape enables maximum momentum of the water jet to be captured. And this is because when the direction of the incident water jet and the direction of the water splashed are exactly opposite. So that is why the blades are shaped like this. Also here we have this gray arrow. This is called the spearhead. So this spearhead meets the varying power demand. This is as follows. So basically what happens is when there is high power demand, this spearhead is moved outside. This enables maximum water, this enables a lot of high flow rate of water inside, and this rotational energy is then converted into higher power. And whereas when the demand for power is low, this spearhead is moved inside, and then the water flow rate is lesser rotational energy, and hence lesser power. There's a cut provided at the bottom portion of the buckets. This cut basically ensures that the incoming buckets, these are the incoming buckets because this goes on rotating. So the incoming buckets do not interfere with the incoming water jet. So this is what this cut is for. Also, there should be an appropriate number of buckets on the wheel to ensure that that water jet is not lost. So if there are lesser number of buckets, then what happens is water simply flows. It does not rotate this turbine. So there has to be an appropriate number of blades to ensure that the rotation is proper and constant. Okay, and also, okay, so the power extracted from this whole process is the product of two things. It is a product of the velocity of the bucket and the impulsive force. Suppose the velocity of the bucket is equal to zero. So in that case, obviously the power extracted will be zero. Whereas if the velocity of the bucket, which is rotating, is equal to the velocity of the water jet, in that case, the impulsive force will be zero, equal and opposite. That is why the power extracted will be zero. Hence, for maximum power extraction, we must have the velocity of the bucket half of the velocity of the water jet. So this type of turbine gives us efficiency over 90%. Coming to the reaction turbines, there are two types of reaction turbines, Francis turbine and Kaplan turbine. So Francis turbine was invented in 1849 by Francis, and this type of turbine is suitable when water energy is available at medium head and medium Q. So these are the runners of the Francis turbine. These runners have thin airfoil cross section. So what happens is when water is incident on these runners, the pressure here is higher as compared to this portion. So what happens is lift force, when water is flowing over it, there's a lift force generated in this direction, which makes the blades rotate. Also at the outlet of the blades are bucket shaped. So what happens is water which flows down, it goes inside and then comes out. This water exerts an impulsive force on these blades. So both the reaction force and the impulsive force makes the blades rotate. So the total force on this Francis turbine is F total is equal to F reaction plus F impulse. So basically, Francis turbine is not a pure reaction turbine. It's called a mixed turbine. So we have water entering radially and exiting axially. So this entire arrangement is encased in this spiral casing here. So this spiral casing, this is the direction of flow of water, and the water flow rate decreases along the length of the spiral casing. This happens because there are gaps provided here. So water seeps into these gaps and reaches the runner. So what we do is that we decrease the area of the spiral casing, and so that the water enters the runners at uniform velocity. At the entry of the runner here, we have stay vanes and we have guide vanes. So stay vanes basically they are fixed vanes, they don't move. They just steer the water flow towards the runner. We need stay vanes because we have to reduce the swirling motion of water. Swirling motion is a motion which goes like this. So the swirling motions dramatically reduces the performance of turbines. That is why we need to reduce this motion as much as possible. The guide vanes basically are used to meet the varying power demand. This is done as follows. When the power demand is high, the guide vanes basically open completely, and then we have entire flow going through the runner. And when the when the power demand is low, the guide vanes close a little bit so that the flow is less. So this is how the water enters the runner and exits the runner from here. So at the exit, we have a draft tube, which is the tube of increasing area. We create this tube simply because when kinetic energy and potential and pressure energy of when water enters the runner, the kinetic energy and pressure energy of the water reduces as it leaves the runner. So this draft tube basically increases the pressure energy of the water when it is released back into the water body. We do this to avoid the problem of cavitation. Now, what is cavitation? Cavitation is basically the rapid formation and collapse of water vapor bubbles. So we know that water at low pressure heats at lower temperature. So out here, when the pressure is very low, water vapor bubbles are formed. Now, if we release these low pressure water vapor bubbles directly into the water body, which is at higher pressure, what happens is the bubbles will collapse, and also this rapid collapsing produces a very concentrated impact on the material, and it might destroy it. So that is why we use this draft tube, which increases the pressure energy of water, increases the pressure of water and releases into the water body. Coming to the Kaplan turbine was invented in 1913 by Kaplan. So it is suitable when water energy is available at low head and high Q. So the spiral casing is similar as was in the Francis turbine. The only difference in this Kaplan turbine is the runner blades. So the runner blades are basically curved shaped, not like this, and they're adjustable. Okay, so let's see how these runner blades work. So Kaplan turbine is a purely reaction turbine. There is no impulse force acting on it. So what happens is this here is a curved airfoil cross section. So when water is incident on it, it's incident on it axially. So that time this is region of high pressure, and this is region of low pressure. So there is a lift force in this direction. The tangential component of the lift force makes the blades rotate. Okay, so what happens? So this V is the absolute velocity of water, U is the velocity of the blades, and W is the relative velocity component of water. So we have for maximum power extraction, we have to ensure that these blades are always at optimum angle of attack. Optimum angle of attack so as to extract maximum power. So these blades adjust themselves, or we adjust the blades in such a way that they're always in the optimum angle. So when water is incident, when the flow of water is very high and the velocity component is high, so this relative velocity component is more axial. So what we do is we make these blades vertical so as to capture the maximum power, so to produce maximum power. So, and when the water is flow rate is less, that time the relative velocity component is more tangential. So these blades are adjusted in a horizontal direction, and then so that the blades are in the maximum optimum angle of attack. So this is how the working of Kaplan turbine, and both of these turbines have efficiencies of from 80 to 90%. This is a graph which gives a clear view of when to use which turbine. So we see that Pelton turbines are pure impulse turbines, and Kaplan turbines are pure reaction turbines, and Francis turbines lie in the middle. So basically, this is used for high head and low Q, because when water is available, when water falls from a very high altitude, that time the potential energy is converted to the kinetic energy, and the kinetic energy ensures that the velocity of water is very high. So this high velocity gives an efficient production of impulse force. That is why Pelton turbine is used in this region of the graph. And whereas in Kaplan turbine, when the is used for low head and high Q, because when the water flow rate is high, that ensures an efficient production of reaction force. So it is used in this region. So we see from this graph that Francis turbine lies in the middle, that is medium H and medium Q. So it can be used for a wide range of applications. The only problem if we use a turbine outside its recommended operating condition is that it won't work efficiently. That's the only problem. So parts of a hydroelectric power plant. This is the basic layout. So this is the reservoir here, and water is stored. It's just a storage space for reservoir, and the height of water in the reservoir determines how much potential energy will the water possess. This is dam, which holds back the water. Dam is made of concrete, rock, stone, etc. And this is the intake. Intake is basically a composition of structures which prevents. One second, Nishat is coming. Okay, this intake is basically a composition of structures which prevents waterlogs or debris or dirt entering this place. This is the control gate which controls the flow of water. Okay, so when these gates are open, that time the water flows and it meets the varying power demand. So this is the penstock. It's a long pipe, large pipe actually, and here the potential energy of water is converted into kinetic energy. So the penstock carries the water from the intake to the turbine. So the water which is incident here spins this turbine. This is the shaft of the turbine. The turbine is connected to a generator. So what happens in this whole process is the kinetic energy of water is converted to the mechanical energy of the turbine. The mechanical energy of the turbine is converted into electrical energy. So this basically the generator works on the principle of electromagnetic induction, in which a varying magnetic field induces current in adjacent conductor. So basically, the generator has three parts: rotor, stator, and cooling component. So the rotor is connected to the shaft, and it has a series of electromagnets. The stator is the stationary part of the generator, which passes electric current through the rotor to produce magnetic field. So when the rotor rotates, the magnetic field varies. The cooling component is provided to maintain the temperature, since electric current has heating effect. So this is how the generator works. The generators produces alternating current, and this is fed to this step-up voltage transformer. So this steps up the voltage, increases the voltage. If you don't increase the voltage, if the voltage is low, then we need a larger number of cables to carry the electricity. So this transformer and generator are encased in this powerhouse. These cables are basically carrying the electricity from the powerhouse to the national grid. So this is the outflow of the hydropower plant. So the water that one second, so I just have to mute these people. 1 second. Anyway, okay. So the water that flows to this outflow, it meets the water body here. The power output of a dam is P is equal to eta efficiency rho G H Q. Types of hydropower. So these are the 4 types of hydropower that we have. 1 second. No. Sorry. These are the 4 types of hydropower that we have: run-of-river, storage, pumped storage, and offshore. Offshore basically derives energy from tidal currents and wave energy. So we're not going to talk about that. Let's start with run-of-river. So this is run-of-river hydropower. In run-of-river hydropower, this is classified into 3 types: micro hydropower, mini hydropower, and small hydropower. This is the corresponding power capacity of each of these. So in run-of-river, basically what we have is that, in run-of-river, we don't have a reservoir. We basically divert a part of the naturally flowing river. This is the naturally flowing river. We divert a part of the naturally flowing river and make it flow over this weir, which is not a dam, it is just a small construction. And then it passes to spin a turbine and it produces electricity. So this weir basically has control gates, which controls the water level and flow rate. Also the weir, this is, suppose the weir is somewhere here. So the weir is somewhere here. The weir also isolates the turbine in case of an emergency or some renovation or something. So and the weir also produces a small storage of water called the pondage in case the flow rate of river is low. So it will use that stored water to produce electricity. So this from the weir, the water flows through this penstock. It spins this Kaplan turbine. This Kaplan turbine's shaft is here, the generator is here, and generates electricity. So this Kaplan turbine is spun and the remaining water is fed back to the river. So here also we have some gates to prevent dirt from this flowing river or some big obstacles from entering the turbine. So this is the basic working of the run-of-river hydropower. The advantage of run-of-river hydropower is that it doesn't involve big construction, so the cost of construction is lesser. So it's easier to get permission for run-of-river hydropower, to construct a run-of-river hydropower. Environmental impacts are there. The water quality definitely gets affected here, but we have provided this thing called fish ladder on the left or right of a power station. So this fish ladder enables fish which have been stuck by mistake to swim over these steps and return back to the river. So run-of-river basically is used to meet our base load demand, and it is a single-purpose hydroelectric power plant. Single purpose meaning it only produces electricity. Storage hydropower. Storage hydropower is a large-scale hydropower plant that has a power capacity of over 100 megawatt. So it works as follows. So similarly, as I showed in the previous slide, this is a reservoir. Water flows through this penstock, spins the turbine, it's connected to the generator, which generates electricity. Now this storage hydropower is also called a multi-purpose hydroelectric power plant. And this is because this dam can be used for many purposes. The dam can be used for irrigation, for water storage, for water supply, for navigation, and also for recreational purposes like boating. This is used to meet the peak load and base load, and the turbine used in this, since it is high H and low Q, is Francis turbine, since it comes in both regions, or better is Pelton turbine. Pumped storage hydropower. So this type of hydropower is mostly used in those countries where water resources not abundant. So this pumped storage hydropower basically assists renewable energy sources like wind, solar, or thermal. So it basically acts like a battery that stores electricity, this electricity which is produced from renewable energy sources, and it can use this electricity again when the power demand is high. So it works as follows. It has, as you can see, this upper storage and lower storage. So this pumped storage hydropower stores and captures water in this upper reservoir and lower reservoir, and there's a steep drop between these two reservoirs. So when, suppose it's a sunny day, or the wind is blowing fast, or there's a lot of wind in the air, then what happens is that we have surplus of power, and suppose at that time only the power demand is quite low. So what we do is that we use that surplus power to in the form of electricity to pump water from the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir. So we do that, and what we do is we store water here. Now suppose the demand is high and the renewable energy sources like wind and solar are not able to meet this. So what we do is, in those cases, we use this as a backup. So we pump the water in the upper reservoir to the lower reservoir, which spins the turbine, and we get electricity. So this entire system in which it works in coordination with other energy sources is very stable, it is very reliable, and it is very clean. So this is the advantage of using pumped storage hydropower. So 1 second. Okay. So the turbine used here is Pelton or a Francis turbine. Hydropower in India. India is the 7th largest producer of hydropower in the world. This is a list of major dams in India, and these are the states in which the dams are there, and the river on which they're constructed. So we have these many dams in India. And the largest hydroelectric power plant in India is the Koyna hydroelectric project in Satara district, Maharashtra. The plant capacity of this is 1920 megawatt. So basically this project is not just one dam, it is a project of 4 dams that is used. And the state, as of 2019, which produced the highest power from hydroelectricity is Himachal Pradesh. It produced 9809 megawatts. So as we saw in the previous slide, the first 2 slides, that 13% of total energy sources in India is hydroelectricity. Advantages and disadvantages of hydropower. So these are the various advantages of hydropower. So first of all, it does not produce greenhouse gases, quick starting, low operational costs, multi-purpose dams, and it can effectively make supply meet demand. Yeah. And it has a long plant life, 40 years or more, before any major renovation. Disadvantage is that when we are selecting a site for hydroelectric power plant, we require that the water quantity is sufficient. The water head is also such, it should be high enough so that we can effectively harness that energy of water. And also there should be a optimum average rainfall in that area. And also the distance of the area from the load center shouldn't be too far. It shouldn't be too big. So therefore, there are limited number of potential plant sites, keeping all of these factors in mind. Also, this construction of dam and everything is very expensive. So the investment is huge, and the payback period is very long. So the money comes back very late. Also, it affects the water quality, and when we create a reservoir, we displace people. People have to be displaced worldwide. 30 to 60 million people have to be displaced to construct this hydroelectric power plants, and all the vegetation gets submerged. Also, in case of collapse of dams, which happens either due to defects in the dams or due to the dam overspill of water on the dam, flooding takes place, which is very risky, very dangerous also. So these are the various disadvantages. So although there's an increase in the global energy demand, the growth of hydropower is limited because of all of these factors, and the growth is limited also because markets only invest in those power plants which are not very capital intensive and which give returns very fast. So mostly all of these hydroelectric power plants are government funded, so government body funded. So it's mostly in those areas where water resource is abundant and where the construction cost is low. Thank you.